Welcome to Reddit Nightmares, where the internet's most disturbing true confessions come to life. Hit subscribe if you're brave enough for more real horror confessions that will follow you into your dreams.
We all have that primal fear, the feeling of being followed, that sensation of eyes boring into your back when you're alone in a place where help is just too far away. But what if the person following you isn't trying to harm you? What if they need something far more terrifying in your life? Today's story comes from a woman who experienced something on a hiking trail that defies explanation. A mysterious follower who wasn't what he seemed to be at all. This is the hiker who followed me. I've always been an avid hiker. Growing up in the Pacific Northwest, the dense forests and winding trails were practically my second home. There's something about being alone with nature that always brought me peace, even as a child. My father used a joke that I was part deer, the way I would disappear into the woods for hours, returning only when hunger or darkness forced me home. When I moved to Colorado for work 3 years ago, I was thrilled about the new terrain to explore. The mountains were different from my childhood forests, more expansive, more exposed, and somehow more ancient. I spent every weekend discovering new trails, pushing myself further into the wilderness. The Blackwood Ridge Trail became my favorite. It wasn't the most popular route, which was part of its appeal. A challenging 14-mile loop that wound through dense pine forest before opening up to breathtaking mountain views. The trail was well marked but rugged enough that casual hikers typically avoided it. On weekdays, you could hike for hours without seeing another soul, which is why that Wednesday in late September started like any other solo hiking day. The weather forecast predicted clear skies, and I had taken a rare midweek day off work. I arrived at the trailhead parking lot just after 8 a.m. Only 2 other cars were there. Typical for a weekday, I double-checked my backpack, water, trail mix, first aid kit, map, extra layers, headlamp, everything I needed for a full day on the trail. The first few miles were exactly what I had come for. The morning sun filtered through the trees, creating dancing patterns on the forest floor. Birds called overhead, and occasionally a squirrel or chipmunk would dart across the path. I maintained a steady pace, my boots crunching rhythmically on the mix of dirt and pine needles. It was around mile 4 when I first noticed him. The trail had just emerged from a particularly dense section of forest into a small clearing. I paused to take a drink of water and happened to glance back toward the path I had just traveled. That's when I saw him, a man in a dark green jacket, maybe 50 yards behind me on the trail. He was tall and lean, with a backpack similar to mine. Nothing particularly unusual about seeing another hiker, but something about him made me take notice. Maybe it was the fact that I hadn't heard him approaching, or maybe it was just that I had grown accustomed to having this particular trail to myself. Whatever the reason, I found myself watching him for a moment longer than normal before continuing on my way. Another 30 minutes of hiking brought me to one of the trail's lookout points, a rocky outcropping that offered spectacular views of the valley below. I decided to take a short break, finding a comfortable spot to sit, and pulling out some trail mix. As I sat enjoying the scenery and my snack, I saw movement on the trail behind me. It was the same man, still keeping the same distance. He didn't look up or acknowledge me as he walked. When he reached the turnoff to the lookout point, he simply continued past it, maintaining his pace on the main trail. There was nothing inherently threatening about him. He was just another hiker enjoying the same trail. But even as I tried to dismiss the uneasy feeling growing in my stomach, I found myself quickly packing up my things and continuing my hike. I picked up my pace a bit, moving faster than my usual hiking speed. The trail began a steady uphill climb here, and I pushed myself harder than normal, feeling a strange urgency to put more distance between myself and the man in the green jacket. About a half hour later, I paused at a bend in the trail to catch my breath. The path behind me was visible for quite a distance, winding down the hillside I had just climbed. And there he was again, maintaining what looked like exactly the same distance as before. This was when I first realized something was off. I had been moving at a fast clip up a challenging section of trail. Either this man was perfectly matching my increased pace, or there was some strange coincidence at play. I waited a moment longer, watching. He continued his steady approach, his gait smooth and unhurried despite the incline. I decided to test my growing suspicion. There was a small offshoot from the main trail up ahead, a short spur that led to another viewpoint before rejoining the main loop. I took this detour, moving quickly to the viewpoint, but instead of stopping to admire the view, I continued on until I reached a spot where I could see back to the junction where the spur path met the main trail. I waited, barely breathing, for nearly 10 minutes, and then, right on cue, the man in the green jacket appeared at the junction. Without hesitation, he turned onto the spur path, the exact same detour I had taken. My heart rate spiked. This wasn't coincidence. He was following me. I turned and hurried along the trail, my mind racing through options. The smart thing would be to get back to the main trail where there might be other hikers. The loop was popular enough that even on a weekday, I'd eventually run into someone else. The next 2 miles were a blur of paranoia and strategy. I tried varying my pace dramatically, sometimes practically jogging, other times slowing to barely more than a crawl. Each time I looked back, he was there, always the same distance. Never closer, never farther. Just persistently there. When I walked quickly, he walked quickly. When I slowed down, so did he. It was as if he was tethered to me by some invisible cord that maintained a perfect 50-yard separation. I tried stopping completely at one point, pretending to retie my boot. I watched in the corner of my eye as he too came to a stop, bending down to apparently adjust something in his sock. We remained like that, both frozen in our pretend adjustments, for nearly 2 full minutes before I couldn't stand it anymore and resumed walking. The fear was evolving into something closer to anger now. Who did this guy think he was? What was his game? I considered confronting him, but years of cautionary tales about women alone in remote places held me back. Instead, I reached into my pocket for my phone, only to be reminded of the reason I love this trail. Absolutely no cell service. The next landmark on the trail was Juniper Creek, roughly the halfway point of the loop. The creek had a sturdy wooden bridge crossing it, and on the other side, the trail split again. The left fork continued the standard loop back to the trailhead, while the right fork extended the hike up to Blackwood Peak, a significantly more strenuous route that added another 4 miles and 2,000 feet of elevation gain. I had a decision to make. Taking the peak route would mean a much longer day, and I hadn't planned for the extra time and exertion, but it was also a more technical section of trail that fewer hikers attempted. If this guy was just some creep trying to frighten a woman hiking alone, he might not be prepared for the more challenging route. As I crossed the bridge, I made a split-second decision and veered right toward the peak. I immediately picked up my pace, pushing hard up the steeper terrain. My legs protested, but fear and adrenaline propelled me forward. After about 20 minutes of relentless climbing, I finally allowed myself to stop and look back. My heart sank. There he was, still maintaining the same distance, still moving with that same unhurried gait despite the challenging ascent. He didn't appear winded or bothered by the change in route at all. If anything, he seemed even more purposeful than before. Something about seeing him so unfazed by my attempt to lose him broke something in me. This had gone beyond creepy coincidence or even standard predatory behavior. There was something unnatural about his persistence, about the mathematical precision with which he maintained his distance. Trail ahead narrowed as it approached a rocky section. Juniper trees clung to sides of the path, their gnarled branches creating a tunnel of sorts. I hurried through this section, and as soon as I emerged on the other side, I left the trail, scrambling up a steep incline to my right, where a large formation of boulders provided some cover. Heart pounding, I crouched behind the rocks and waited, desperately trying to control my breathing so it wouldn't give away my position. 5 minutes passed, then 10. I began to hope that maybe I had finally lost him. Maybe he had continued along the trail, unaware that I had gone off path. Just as I was about to peek out from my hiding spot, I heard it, the unmistakable sound of boots on loose rock, moving slowly, deliberately up the same incline I had scrambled up moments before. He wasn't on the trail at all. He was coming directly toward my hiding place. Pure panic surged through me. I looked around frantically for a weapon, anything I could use to defend myself. My hand closed around a fist-sized rock, and I gripped it tightly, pressing my back against the boulder behind me. The footsteps grew closer, then stopped. I could sense him just on the other side of the boulder I was using for cover. The silence stretched for what felt like eternity, broken only by the hammering of my heart and the wind rustling through the trees. "I know you're there," a voice finally said. It was soft, almost gentle. Not at all what I had expected. "Please, I need to talk to you." I remained frozen, the rock clutched so tightly in my hand that my fingers began to cramp. "I'm not going to hurt you," the voice continued. "I promise. I just need your help." There was something in his tone, a note of genuine desperation that made me hesitate. Still gripping my makeshift weapon, I slowly peered around the edge of the boulder. The man in the green jacket stood about 10 feet away. Up close, I could see that he was younger than I thought, probably in his early 30s. His face was drawn, pale, with dark circles under eyes that looked too old for his face. His clothes, which had seemed ordinary from a distance, now appeared strangely dated. The kind of hiking gear you might have seen in the late 90s or early 2000s. "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice coming out stronger than I felt. "Why are you following me?" He swallowed hard, his atoms apple-bobbing prominently in his thin neck. "My name is Daniel Chambers, and I've been trying to leave this trail for 2 years." I stared at him, uncomprehending. "What are you talking about?" "I can't leave the trail on my own," he said, his voice breaking slightly. "I've tried countless times, but I always end up back here, walking the same path, day after day, until you came." My grip on the rock loosened slightly, confusion temporarily overshadowing fear. "That doesn't make any sense." "I know," he said with a bitter laugh that held no humor. "Believe me, I know. But when you look back at me earlier today, when you actually saw me, something changed. For the first time in I don't know how long, I could choose to follow a different path. Your path, a chill that had nothing to do with the mountain air, ran down my spine. You're not making any sense. If this is some kind of joke or game, it's not." His eyes locked with mine, and the depth of anguish in them made me falter. "Please, I need you to listen. I was hiking this trail in October 2021, alone just like you. I reached the peak around midday. The weather was perfect, not a cloud in the sky. But while I was up there, something happened." He paused, seeming to struggle for words. The sky suddenly darkened, not like a storm, more like someone turning down a dimmer switch on the sun. The air got cold, heavy somehow. I decided to head back down immediately, but the trail, it wasn't the same trail anymore. Despite the absurdity of his story, goosebumps raised on my arms. I kept walking, thinking I had somehow gotten turned around. But no matter which direction I went, the trail just looped back on itself. Night fell, but it wasn't a normal night. No stars, no moon, just darkness and silence. No wildlife sounds, nothing. He took a step closer, and I instinctively raised the rock again. He stopped, raising his hands in a placating gesture. When the sun came up, I thought I was saved. I started hiking again, convinced I'd find my way out. But the day just repeated itself, over and over. The same trees, the same rocks, the same trail that led nowhere. I've experienced the same day hundreds of times now, trapped in an endless loop. His voice cracked. "Until today. Until you looked back and saw me." I shook my head, trying to process his bizarre tale. "This is crazy. You say you've been stuck on this trail for over 2 years? That's impossible. You'd have starved." A humorless smile twisted his lips. "I did, many times. But I always wake up again at the trailhead the next morning, hungry but alive. My water bottle always full again. It's part of the loop." "If what you're saying were true," I said slowly, "how would I be able to help you?" "I don't know exactly," he admitted. "But you're the first person who's been able to see me in all this time. Others have hiked past, right through me sometimes. But you look back, you saw me, and when you changed your path, I could follow. For the first time, I had a choice." I stared at him, torn between disbelief and a growing, inexplicable certainty that he was telling the truth. There was something about him, a transparency that seemed almost literal at times, as if when the sunlight hit him at certain angles, I could see the landscape behind him. "What do you want from me?" I asked finally. "I think," he hesitated, "I think I need you to lead me off the trail, back to the trailhead, back to the real world." His eyes were pleading now. "I've tried so many times, but I always end up back in the loop. But maybe with you, maybe I can leave this place." Part of me wanted to run, to scramble back down to the trail and sprint all the way back to my car, leaving the strange, possibly delusional man and his impossible story behind. But another part of me, the part that had always sensed there was more to the world than what we could easily explain, held me in place. "Okay," I heard myself say. "We'll try." Relief washed over his features, making him look younger, more human. "Thank you." We made our way back down to the trail in silence. I walked in front, acutely aware of his presence behind me. But the menacing feeling I had experienced earlier had transformed into something more complex. A mixture of fear, doubt, and an odd sense of responsibility. As we hiked, I peppered him with questions, partly out of curiosity and partly to distract myself from the strangeness of the situation. He told me he had been a software engineer from Denver. He had a sister in Seattle and parents in Ohio. He had been 34 when he got caught in the loop, as he called it, that would make him 36 now, though he didn't seem to have aged. "Time doesn't work right here," he explained when I asked about this. "It's like I'm preserved in amber, always hungry but never starving to death, always tired but never able to truly rest." The more he spoke, the more I found myself believing him, despite every rational part of my brain screaming that this was impossible. There was a consistency to his story and, more importantly, an authentic desperation that I didn't think could be faked. We reached Juniper Creek again, crossing back over the wooden bridge. Daniel visibly tense as we did. "I've never made it past this point before," he said quietly. "Whenever I try to cross this bridge heading back, I either find myself walking in circles, ending up back at the creek from another direction, or simply waking up the next morning at the trailhead, starting the loop again." I felt a cold weight settle in my stomach. "Well, we're across now," I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "Let's keep going." The next few miles were tense with anticipation. Daniel walked closer to me now, sometimes almost stepping on my heels. He kept looking around with a mixture of wonder and terror, like a prisoner seeing the outside world for the first time in years. "It looks different," he murmured at one point. "The trail, it's not the same as in my loop. The colors are brighter. There are more sounds. Indeed, the forest seemed unusually alive around us. Birds called overhead, squirrels chattered, and the wind rustled through the trees with an almost musical quality. I found myself noticing details I had overlooked on countless previous hikes. The intricate patterns of lichen on rocks, the varied greens of moss clinging to tree trunks, the complex dance of shadow and light on the forest floor. We were about 2 miles from the trailhead when Daniel suddenly stopped, a look of panic crossing his face. "What's wrong?" I asked, freezing in place. "It's happening again," he whispered, his eyes wide with terror. "Can't you feel it?" I couldn't feel anything unusual, but the genuine fear in his expression made me uneasy. "What is it?" "The air. It's getting heavy, like before." He looked up at the sky, which to me appeared perfectly normal, clear blue with a few wispy clouds. "It's coming. Let's move faster," I suggested, picking up my pace. "We're not far from the trailhead now." He nodded, practically jogging to keep up with me. His breathing had become rapid and shallow, his eyes darting frantically from side to side, as if expecting something to emerge from the trees at any moment. The trail narrowed again, winding through a particularly dense section of forest. The canopy overhead thickened, casting the path in deep shadow. As we moved through this section, even I began to feel a subtle shift in the atmosphere. The temperature seemed to drop several degrees. The forest sounds that had been so vibrant minutes before had diminished to an eerie silence. Daniel grabbed my arm, his fingers digging painfully into my flesh. "Do you see it now?" he hissed. Ahead of us, the trail appeared to shimmer slightly, as if viewed through heat waves rising from hot asphalt. Beyond that distortion, the path looked different, darker, overshadowed by trees that seemed more ominous and twisted than they should be. "What is that?" I whispered, coming to a stop. "The loop?" Daniel's voice was barely audible. "It's pulling me back." I stared at the shimmering distortion, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. It wasn't solid like a wall or a barrier, more like a permeable membrane between two versions of the same place. One vibrant and real, the other a muted, twisted reflection. "We have to go through it," I said, surprised at myself with a certainty in my voice. Together, Daniel's face was ashen now, his eyes wide with dread. "I can't. Every time I try to leave, it pulls me back. It's stronger than I am." I made a split-second decision and grabbed his hand. His skin was ice cold and felt oddly insubstantial, as if I were holding on to morning mist that had temporarily taken solid form. "This time you're not alone," I said, squeezing his hand as firmly as I could. "We're going through together, on 3. 1, 2, 3. I surged forward, pulling him with me toward the shimmering distortion. For a moment, there was resistance, as if I were trying to drag him through thick mud. His hand began to slip from my grasp, becoming less solid by the second. "Don't let go," I shouted, gripping his hand with both of mine now. We hit the shimmering barrier, and the world around us seemed to warp and twist. Colors inverted, sounds distorted, and I felt a crushing pressure in my chest, as if all the air was being squeezed from my lungs. Daniel's scream sounded distant and warped, though he was right beside me. And then we were through, stumbling forward onto normal trail again. The pressure vanished, and the forest sounds returned in a rush. Birds, wind, the distant gurgle of a stream. I gasped for breath, doubling over with my hands on my knees. "We did it," I panted, turning to look at Daniel. But he wasn't celebrating. He stood rigid, staring down at himself with an expression of wonder and horror. His body was changing before my eyes, becoming more solid, more present. The almost translucent quality I had noticed earlier was gone, replaced by a corporeality that made him suddenly seem much more human. At the same time, other changes were occurring. His modern hiking clothes were melting away, replaced by what looked like torn jeans and a flannel shirt. His clean-shaven face sprouted a wild, matted beard, and his neatly trimmed hair grew longer, unkempt. "Daniel," I whispered, taking a step back. He looked up at me, and his eyes were different too, wilder, haunted in a way they hadn't been before. "Not Daniel," he said, his voice rougher than before. "I'm Robert Gaines." I stared at him in shock. "But you said—" "I needed you to help me," he interrupted, a smile spreading across his face that made my blood run cold. "I needed you to see me, to believe me, to pull me through." "I don't understand," I managed, continuing to back away from him. 2 years ago," he said, advancing toward me as I retreated. "A hiker named Daniel Chambers disappeared on this trail. They searched for weeks but never found him, because I found him first." My back hit a tree, stopping my retreat. "What did you do to him?" Robert smiled, revealing teeth that looked too sharp, too numerous. "I was like you once, alive, real, until I followed someone off the trail I shouldn't have. I've been trapped between worlds ever since, unable to leave, unable to fully exist, until I found a way to trade places." Horrified understanding dawned on me. "Daniel is where I was," Robert confirmed. "Trapped in the loop, and I'm finally free." He reached toward me, and his hand passed through my arm as if testing his new solidity. "Not quite there yet," he mused. "Need to anchor myself more firmly in this world." In that moment, instinct took over. I shoved past him and ran, sprinting down the trail toward the trailhead. His laughter followed me, echoing through the trees in a way that no normal sound should be able to. "You can't run from me." His voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. "You brought me back. We're connected now." I ran faster than I ever had before, my lungs burning, branches whipping at my face. The trail seemed to stretch endlessly ahead of me, though I knew the trailhead couldn't be more than a mile away now. When I finally burst into the parking lot, gasping for breath, the afternoon sun was shining brightly overhead. My car sat where I had left it that morning, looking perfectly normal and mundane. There were more vehicles now, a red SUV, a couple of sedans, a park ranger's truck. I fumbled for my keys with trembling hands, desperate to get inside the car, to lock the doors, to drive far away from this place. As I unlocked the door, I glanced back toward the trailhead one last time. Robert stood at the edge of the forest, his form flickering slightly like a bad television signal. He raised his hand in a mocking wave, and even from this distance, I could see his smile, too wide, too hungry. "See you soon," his voice whispered directly into my ear, though he stood 50 yards away. I threw myself into the car, locked the doors, and peeled out of the parking lot so fast that gravel sprayed behind my tires. In my rearview mirror, I watched Robert's figure grow smaller, but I couldn't shake the feeling that distance meant nothing to him now. That was 3 weeks ago. I haven't returned to the trail, to any trail. Since then, I've done research, trying to find information about Robert Gaines or Daniel Chambers. I found old news articles about a Robert Gaines who went missing in those mountains in 1987. His body was never recovered. Daniel Chambers is still listed as a missing person. But the worst part is that I don't think I'm free of him. Sometimes, from the corner of my eye, I catch glimpses of a tall figure in a green jacket, always maintaining the same distance. Never closer, never farther. When I turn to look directly, there's never anyone there, but I know he's watching, waiting. Last night, I woke to find my hiking boot, which I had shoved into the back of my closet, sitting neatly by my bedroom door, still caked with mud from the trail. On the floor beside them was a small pile of pine needles, arranged in an arrow pointing toward the mountains. I think he wants me to go back. I think he needs me for something else, something worse than helping him cross over. And I'm terrified that sooner or later, I won't have a choice. Because sometimes, when I catch those glimpses of him from the corner of my eye, he's not alone. Sometimes, I see another figure with him, a younger man with haunted eyes that seem to silently plead for help. I think it's Daniel, or what's left of him. And sometimes when I look in the mirror, I swear I can see pine trees reflected behind me. Though there are none outside my window, the forest is calling me back. Or maybe it's Robert, using the forest somehow. Either way, I don't think this is over. I brought something back with me from that trail, something that should have stayed trapped in whatever strange loop it had been confined to. And now I don't know how to send it back. So, if you're hiking alone and you feel eyes on your back, if you notice someone keeping pace behind you, always the same distance, never closer, never farther, don't look back, don't acknowledge them. And whatever you do, don't try to help them leave the trail, because they might not be trying to leave at all. They might be trying to bring you in. If you enjoyed this terrifying hiking story, make sure to check out more paranormal encounters and creepy tales on Reddit Nightmares. The darkness is waiting, and sometimes it follows you home.